Okay, we're going to get started now. Sorry for the delay. We had a lot of people logging in at the same time, and our servers are having a little difficulty accepting it all. So, good afternoon. My name's Peggy Padalino, and I'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us. Our goal today is to give you some insight into how the hiring process has changed in the past year and why it's changed. But more importantly, we're going to give you some tricks on how you should be positioning yourself on your resume so you are the one chosen for interviews and ultimately to get the job. So I have a few people on the call today. I'd like to first introduce Shelly Piper, who is going to be our keynote speaker. Shelly is president and founder of the Career Doc and also one of our certified resume writers. She's a former recruiter and headhunter, so Shelly intimately understands the nuances that exist behind the scenes in the recruitment process. She leverages this insight when she's rewriting resumes for us or coaching her clients on how to effectively present themselves in the current employment market. Today, Shelly is going to share some of her secrets and tips and that she gives to her own clients. We also have on the phone, calling in from the Philadelphia area, John Martis. John is a Jobfox member and a resume client, and he's going to share the story of his job search and how he ultimately landed his new job. And then last but not least, I have with me some names you might recognize, our resume consultants that critique your resumes. We have Andrew Manning, Patrick Taylor, Ian Richards, and Jeremy Brooks. Okay, now to move to the agenda. Just to give you an idea of kind of what, from a timing standpoint, we're going to start with Shelly. She's going to talk about changes in the hiring process and what's prompted the changes. And then she's going to give you the top 7 mistakes that she sees on most of her clients' resumes. Shelly will talk for about 18 minutes or so. Then John will be on for just a couple of minutes and tell us how he landed his new job. Then we'll have Q&A. Now, the way we'd like to handle Q&A is that if you have any questions during the course of the presentation, simply type them into chat, and we're going to be collecting those through the presentation, and at the end, we'll kind of consolidate them and try to answer as many questions as we can. Okay? So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Shelly and let her take it away.
I want to, first of all, welcome everybody for joining us. These are areas and issues that are dear to my heart as I'm working with Jobfox clients in particular. I do write approximately about 200 to 300 resumes a year for Jobfox, and have had a real pleasure in understanding some of the challenges and caveats that job seekers are experiencing out there at all levels. And as Peggy had mentioned, I did used to recruit and headhunt both for agency and for corporate, both regionally and nationwide for a lot of different industries and job functions. And within that, really got to understand some of the concerns that are going on behind the scenes for hiring managers and recruiters as they're making decisions on which candidates to bring in for an interview for consideration. And we'll speak to that and incorporate that later on into our conversation. So when I was recruiting, it was really back in the day, about 5 or 6 years ago, it was a very, very candidate-driven market. And therefore, the recruitment processes that companies were using were very different. They had more opportunity to take risks and take chances in bringing on board someone who maybe didn't have industry-specific experience or a job function-specific experience. They had that sort of leeway to take those kinds of chances. And we were really aggressive in trying to find candidates to fill slots as we were in aggressive growth mode. And we would, take that chance and bring that person on board and then move on to trying to fill the next position. Today, of course, that is not the same. Ever since 2008, when everything dramatically shifted, of course, business operations and their recruitment practices had to change and adapt in order to be successful in their operations and sustain and be profitable despite all the challenges that they're facing. And so we're going to quickly go over some of the changes that are going on in the recruitment processes today in the past couple of years, and also how that directly impacts your strategy to the market, and especially as it pertains into how you will be writing and designing your resume to be more impactful in positioning, branding, and marketing yourself to the companies and organizations of choice. So, of course, and I hear this all the time, there's a real trend for companies to be investing even more in purchasing these comprehensive software digital platforms where they are utilizing it to manage the applicants that are applying for different positions, different roles, and they're also using a sophisticated sort of matching technology. And I know firsthand how we used to utilize this when I was recruiting. I'd set up specific search parameters, sort of like a Google search, and then have the computer do the heavy lifting of the search to decide which candidate should be in my online pile, if you will, for consideration, and then I'd pick and choose accordingly. So it's sort of a two-part process, and you want to really understand how that impacts your job search so that you can make sure that you have a resume that's really going to market you within that particular sort of a platform. And thirdly, of course, and this is going on a lot out there, a lot of the companies are really investing in having their recruiters utilize LinkedIn, Twitter, sorts of other social media platforms to find and hunt for the talent that they're looking for, sort of an organic recruitment strategy. That's not an area that we'll be focusing on today. As I said, we'll be focusing more on your resume strategy. And one of the other real concerns and areas we're going to talk about, this is really important for job seekers. I know that you may have been able to use a certain kind of a resume format, not have to give it much thought years ago, but today it's very, very different, where companies are really niche market focused, and there is a real trending for specialization, and you want to make sure that when you're writing and developing your resume that you are addressing these areas of concern. As I said, they just really can't take that kind of a risk in bringing on somebody on board who does not really specifically understand the pain points of the organization, their consumer markets, their regional pain points. And if and wherever possible, if you can speak to that, you want to develop a resume that talks to that so that you're telling the recruiter, the hiring manager, I get your world. I understand where your challenges are, and I can be the value solution provider to what you need. So we'll just kind of break that down. Oh, one other point. Also, we're going to take a look at different techniques that you can incorporate into your resume with regards to what I call the soft talents. That's also another real area that recruiters and hiring managers are looking for. So if there's a way that you can convey that on your resume, you're going to be more effective. And especially since there's a real stress and under pressure to sustain and survive during this very difficult economic time, they're really looking for individuals who can bring on board above and beyond, somebody who's an innovator, somebody who's a leader, somebody who's a big picture thinker, somebody who can identify upcoming trends and lead the company to be proactive in meeting and addressing those trends and capturing that revenue opportunity. Just some food for thought, some of the things that we'll be looking for. And again, I'm always constantly coming from a viewpoint of having been a recruiter and having been a headhunter and what I would be looking for, putting myself into the hiring manager's mindset as they're looking through resumes and determining who to come in for an interview or who to conduct a phone screen with. So one of the 7 most common strategic mistakes that I see when I'm working with people is a real tendency to overgeneralize and trying to be all things to all people. This is something that you definitely want to be aware of, and if it's something you're trying to do, you want to understand that there's a real need to, if and wherever possible, there's never a cookie-cutter approach. Every job seeker is very individualistic in what they're trying to accomplish and what their background and what their challenges are. So, but in a lot of situations, it really behooves individuals to create a couple of different versions of their resume or to tweak their resume accordingly to specific opportunities. When you're overgeneralizing, you're sending sort of like an ambiguous, unclear message to the recruiter and the hiring manager of where your unique value proposition is. And you're making them have to work for it and try to find it on your resume. And when I'm running into a resume like that, as I'm trying to identify the talent, again, as I said, I'm coming from a recruiter's perspective, I don't have time to figure this out. I don't have time to read through your entire resume and get down to page 2 where you're hitting the nail on the head telling me where you would fit into my organization. I need to have you convey that within the first page at the very top and jump out at me so I get it. And then I'm going to pull your resume aside for consideration to take you to the next step. If you're not having it jump out at me, I'm going to miss your resume and I'm going to bring in the next person for consideration. And just a couple of points here. I thought it would be really helpful to just point at a couple of different scenarios with individuals I've worked with to kind of drive the point home. And one of those would be someone that I worked with who had a very strong background in operations within a print production shop. He had worked for a lot of mid-sized privately owned organizations, and about 7 years ago had the opportunity to get involved, hands-on involved in sales. And he was, for whatever reason, what was going on within that particular situation, was actually on the phone prospecting, calling, reestablishing relationships with former clients, and he was extremely successful in closing new contracts and rebuilding credibility and trust. And he just sort of created this sort of unique scenario where he was also very good at operations, and he was also very good at sales. You don't necessarily find that. Not everybody can be a two-hitter. Not everybody can play football and golf and be good at both. There are two completely different skill sets. But in his situation, he had that. And so I first started working with him. He wanted to create a resume that would be sales-oriented, going after a sales manager position, when in fact the experience that he had was about 6-7 years ago. So I expressed to him that it would be really important for us to shape a second version of his resume to go after that if he wanted to speak to a sales manager, because right now his existing resume was more operations focused, and there's just two different animals, and you're talking to two different markets, two different audiences. Hiring managers have different pain points, and that he would be more effective if we could reshape. So we created one for operations, one for sales manager, and also a third sort of an orientation where he was more pursuing a multidisciplinary opportunity. So it's really about specialization. It's really about shaping your resume specific to your audience and what they care about and keeping it relevant, not trying to tell them everything that you can do, because you'll be losing their interest. Another situation was with a man, a very brilliant individual, who probably about 10, 12 years ago had been extremely successful in international manufacturing operations and shipping and logistics, and all that went in on there working in Europe. And then he had moved recently to the United States in the past 7 years and had been very successful sort of as a consultant developing small medical practices in the Southwest region. Two completely different markets, two completely different disciplines and industries. And he wanted me to create a resume that spoke to all of them on one resume. And I explained to him that he would be highly ineffective in penetrating if it's going after a medical healthcare opportunity if his resume didn't speak specifically to their concerns, their pain points, what's going on in their industry, and a different version that would target if he wanted to pursue an international manufacturing opportunity. And just trying to give some specific scenarios to really drive the point home. Next, this is something that's been growing even more so in today's market. As we mentioned, a lot of the organizations and companies are investing in expensive software platforms so that they can basically lean on the computer to do a lot of the heavy work, where they're putting in specific search parameters of what they're looking for and having the computer do the heavy lifting, going through the hundreds and thousands of resumes and determining which ones to bring to the forefront for that recruiter, for the hiring manager to review for consideration. So it's really important for job seekers today to understand to have also, in addition to a regular resume and cover letter, but to also have a third component of their marketing documents is what we call the electronic resume. An electronic resume is not like a pretty resume. What it is that the resume that's specifically formatted so the computer systems can read and scan your information correctly into the databases so that when a recruiter or hiring manager is pulling up your information, they can read it without any sort of weird-looking symbols. It's formatted. It's flushed correctly. In addition, when you're working with a professional resume writer, we're also in the process of understanding this is going on behind the scenes. So we're weaving in certain specific words that the recruiter or the hiring manager would be conducting in their search when they're creating the search parameters, and we're also creating sort of a strategic keyword summary, so it'll help enhance the opportunity of your resume, making it to the top for consideration. That's also another thing that's really going on. I see it all the time. Companies are really investing in these software platforms, and you want to make sure that you have the right resume to submit for online job searches and online applications. The third point that I see, and this kind of taps into overgeneralization, but it also has its own unique caveats as well. So sometimes I'll be working with clients, and I'm speaking with someone who really lacks a clear direction on where they're heading. And more than ever, it's extremely important to have clarity in your job search so that you can flesh out your marketing documents, your job search. Everything is based upon that clarity. And when you're not sending a clear message out there in the marketplace, and in addition with your marketing documents, you're sending an ambiguous message that you're not really sure where you're going, you're not sure really where you're committed to, and you're not really sure where exactly you fit into an organization's needs. And it just kind of falls flat. It doesn't really have a compelling punch on your resume if you don't have that sort of clarity. And the more and more you fine-tune so that you're reshaping it so it's specific to your audience and what they want to hear about, the more and more you're going to emotionally draw them into wanting to pick up that phone and have a conversation with you. This is one of my favorite areas that I always like to educate or sort of reshape the paradigm when I'm working with resume clients, and that is really the importance of, especially in today's market, where a lot of organizations are really struggling to survive and sustain and to stay competitive in our global marketplace, is one really great strategy on how you can uniquely differentiate yourself out there in the marketplace is the area of speaking to the pain points. And so if you really understand and are keeping abreast of your industry, of particular organizations that you may be interested in pursuing, to understand the pain points that they are going through now, or that they may be experiencing in the next 3 to 6 months, or maybe in the next 1 to 2 years. And if you want to target that organization or industry, then make sure to capture this opportunity to shape your resume and your strategies so that bullet points will speak to those pain points. And just to give you a couple of quick examples, one of those areas would be, let's say, in areas, especially in today's world, one of the areas of compliance and regulation. I mean, isn't that just like one of the areas where the government is really coming on board, and there's all sorts of new regulations that they're at the state and the federal level. And for an organization to truly be successful, they need to bring someone on board who can manage that process. So let's say there's a whole new set of regulations that are coming out. Let's say when the HIPAA came out in the healthcare industry, the businesses, there's a complete upshift in business operations. And if I could bring somebody on board who had experience in understanding the complexities of compliance and regulations, somebody who had experience in educating and training my staff, and also garnering their buy-in to follow the new processes and procedures that we are going to be putting in place. Someone who understands how to create tracking systems and, really kind of manage that whole process. If that's something that your organization or your industry of choice is going to be going through now, or that you see there's a trend in the next 6 months, they're going to be really facing that. If you have experience in that, you want to make sure that you're pulling that to the top in your cover letter and also in your resume, so it speaks to their pain points and uniquely differentiates you against the competition who may have just kind of left it as a bullet point on the second page. Does that make sense? Another particular area of a pain point was with someone I was just recently working with. It was a very interesting situation. I'm just, again, trying to get you to reshape your paradigm of how you're thinking and what they're looking for when they're looking on your resumes, and putting yourself in their feet as where they're standing when they're trying to make a decision who to bring on board. One particular situation was a hospitality operation that was expanding and building a new 5-star hotel within a specific regional market. Now, within that regional market, it was very academic-based, and it was a little secluded. And so one of the concerns was that they had a sort of a limited talent pool to pull from, where they would have sort of an experienced service-oriented professionals that they could bring on board to develop that operation and ramp up very quickly, and keeping the 5-star ratings are so important. And it's extremely important in the hospitality industry that when you first come on board, everything's chaotic, but that you're focusing on keeping that brand integrity of what people expect, or otherwise you're going to start to have a poor reputation because you're not meeting, in this situation, you wouldn't be meeting that 5-star standard, and they would be losing their rating. So this individual had experience in understanding how to address certain talent pool challenges, if you will, and he, knew how to specifically create recruitment processes. He knew how to set up training programs. He knew how to groom and develop a younger talent pool, and how to get them engaged and committed to 5-star level service standards. And he also knew how to instill a culture of just top level service. So he had that experience, and in pursuing this particular opportunity, if you're keeping abreast, like I said, keeping current on what's going on in the market, you can tweak your resume and your cover letter accordingly to speak to this potential pain point. Let's say in this situation, they're opening up a new operation in a new regional market, and there's unique challenges associated with that. And if you have experience with that, you want to speak to it. Okay. So this is another area that really actually kind of surprises me, and this is where we have a lot of fun in working with resume clients to really help to reshape their understanding of what they bring to the market and what they bring as a value solution provider to an organization. I see a lot of individuals sort of taking sort of a cut and paste of a job description approach and thinking that if they are sharing with someone with the tasks, the responsibilities that they had, that's going to be enough to get them and get their foot in the door for an interview. Today, more than ever, is extremely important that if and wherever possible, you are speaking to measurable results and performance metrics. Now, I know that it's not possible in all situations, but sometimes when I'm working with someone, it is we're able to kind of create a storyline with regards to an estimated or forecasted or projected or impact or increased productivity. We can tell a story about that. That's what captures a hiring manager's attention. Number one, how do you impact my bottom line? How do you impact my revenue? How do you impact my profitability, my net margin? How do you impact my costs, my expenses? How do you impact my strategic competitive positioning against a global market? Just some food for thought. And it could be in the areas of, did you bring an idea to the table, taking outside the normal role description of your job role that you were brought on board initially for? Did you come up with a new idea or make a recommendation on a particular revenue opportunity that the company was missing? Did you realize that perhaps that their existing marketing strategy was missing the mark and really capturing this consumer market who would be very interested in their product or their service, but they hadn't really thought about repositioning and tapping into that market? And, you did, and you made a recommendation, and the company acted upon it. What would have been the additional incremental revenue that you brought in because of your strategic recommendation? If you brought to the table a new idea on how they could shift operations, how they could create a new tracking system, how they could create a new protocol internally to manage printing projects so that it would eliminate cost, eliminate quality errors, improve the accuracy, improve the turnaround time by 5 to 10 days, create sort of a better relationship with your other vendors so you're all on the same board. If you brought a strategic idea, recommendation, and the company acted upon it, how would, just estimate, that have impacted their bottom line, their revenue, their ability to keep their customers happy, and to build a new reputation in the marketplace as the person to go to for print production needs. Just to really think in a different level. I always hear people say, well, I just did what I did and I do what I do and that's my job. You really want to reshape that and take the time necessary to give yourself credit for what you've done and to shape it in a way and how it impacted bottom line. And if and wherever possible, to put it into a performance metric or measurable results, numbers, percentages, dollar amounts, that's all the kinds of things that really jump out and catch the reader's attention on your resume. This is another fun area in working with resume clients. To help them to, as I said, sometimes people are just going about their jobs, they're kind of running around like crazy, just doing what they do, not really thinking it through. And when I'm working with them, I always love to ask them in a CAR format, challenge, action, result. And it really helps to pull a lot of additional information that I'm looking for so I can strengthen their positioning in the marketplace. What were some of the key challenges that an organization or a division was experiencing when you came on board in that role? Why did that employer hire you at that time versus the competition to fill that role because they obviously knew you had a specific skill set that they needed to help them to overcome that challenge or to execute upon an initiative? And what were some of the other additional challenges that came up during the duration while you were in that role? And what were your unique areas of skill sets? And just to kind of broaden that, what were your unique areas of leadership, your strategic ideas, your strategic recommendations, your ability to engage employees and to get their buy-in into new ways of doing business? What were your people skills in developing and cultivating those necessary organic relationships with vendors, partners, the media? What were your unique ideas with regards to operations, R&D, engineering, anything you uniquely brought to the table that helped them to overcome and move through that challenge? And then, of course, what were the results? And if and wherever possible, to relate in a way with regards to performance metrics and measurable results, or even like benchmark metrics. How did you increase sales? And what was the percentage from the benchmark from when you came on board and 3 years later? How were you able to increase, and what percentage were you able to increase? And when you go about this and incorporate this as you're developing your resume, you're going to realize that there's so many things that you've missed in about telling your story, what you bring to the table. And you're also going to be able to think differently and pull it hopefully into a way where it conveys the value to the bottom line. And you also want to back that up maybe very quickly with some specific initiatives or tactics that you use, because it kind of completes the story. You're making a statement, and then you want to back it up with how you did that, and you've got to somehow concisely and succinctly tell that on a resume, and that's why sometimes working with a professional can really help you to crystallize that area. And lastly, and this gets really a little bit more of an advanced level, but I wanted to just kind of bring this up because when I'm working with clients, again, there's never a cookie-cutter approach. Everybody's situation and strategy to the market is very different based upon their background, their training, the challenges they've worked through, and also what's going on within their personal life. I've seen people need to reshape their strategy to the market to accompany sorts of different things they're trying to create in their life at that time. So, again, we're always constantly talking about specialization and really communicating your unique value with regards to having it jump out so that the resume, so that the hiring manager or the recruiter doesn't have to sift through your resume and try to figure it out, but that's jumping out and really clearly communicates to them exactly where you fit in within their organization. And so sometimes when I'm working with individuals, this is just one very sort of a simple example. In my eyes, there's three different levels. There's leadership, there's management, and there's sole contributor skills. And so if I'm working with someone who is a manager and wants to move into a director VP level role, what I'm looking for when I'm working with that client is to understand their leadership skills. leadership skills as in the way of being innovative, being strategic, being big picture, being visionary, areas where they may have pioneered new ideas, areas where they may have identified upcoming trends and shifts in the market and have taken action or implemented strategies to capture that opportunity. Areas of being able to work from a big picture overview and incorporate with all the other departments and divisions into mesh very well as a unified operation. That's what I'm looking for. Also, I'm looking for a skill set in being able to groom and develop a management team. If I'm working with someone who, let's say, has been a sole contributor, examples of that would be someone who has been in the field being a sole contributor in sales, and they were responsible for their own individual quota for a long time, and now they want to move into management. Or I'm working with someone who has been in public relations, who has been the one in the field, in the office, writing and developing all the press releases and making the phone calls to pitch the stories to their media contacts, things like this. And now they wanted to move into management. The certain kind of skill sets that I'm looking for, if I'm developing a resume for them and I'm working one-on-one with them, we help to develop a story of where, even though they have not been in management, that they actually have utilized management skills and strategies, and what were those results. And the skill sets I would be looking for is for someone, areas where they may have mentored other associates. And this can, sometimes we are able to pull in some of their other experience and volunteer opportunities. It all depends upon the unique situation. But where they're able to groom and mentor and help people, their coworkers, to produce the results that they needed so they can improve their performance. Different sort of training and instructional methods that they may have been involved in assisting the existing sales manager. Their ability to really organize and take on a lot of different roles and responsibilities and juggle a lot of different hats and responsibilities at one time. Also, I'd be looking for someone who can work well with their other divisions and departments in coordinating a unified front. Meaning that I've worked in organizations where sales, and then there was a sales division, and then there was also an implementation operations division, and at that particular moment in time, they were fighting and sparring with each other. And it took a certain kind of a person with a certain leadership skill to address the issue and to organize to get everybody on board. We need to fix this, and then to facilitate a sort of an action plan of how they're going to address those conflicts between the two divisions. So if I'm looking for someone to move into management and or into a leadership role, I'm looking to see if there might be situations where someone has done that, has utilized that skill set, and has that sort of leadership capability. And there are also situations where I may be working with someone who has been in management and wants to, they've done it, they've tasted it, they don't want to be in management anymore. Being a sole contributor and being a manager are two completely different animals. So I bump into those situations as well. And in that situation, we really want to tone down the management. We'll mention it, but we want to tone it down, and we really want to focus on bringing back up their sole contributor skills and where they were successful, and tell a story that's focused on their sole contribution at that level. So just some food for thought. Some of the areas, I do write approximately 250 to 300 resumes for Jobfox annually. I have seen a lot of patterns in a lot of areas where I see people struggling, and I'm really grateful that Jobfox has given me the opportunity to educate you, to help reshape your paradigm as you're developing your resume, also maybe reshaping your approach to the market. And just to bring in closing today, what we took a look at was very quickly just to really understand that today is a new world, especially ever since 2008. Businesses have absolutely had to reshape what they're doing in the market to be successful. That has also impacted their recruitment processes and their strategies. And we went over some of those caveats that are involved with that and how that impacts your job search. And then also we brought down how that impacts your resume writing strategy and some tips and techniques that you can utilize so you can be more impactful in being brought in for consideration for the interview. And this is my contact information. We're experiencing some technical difficulty in moving over the new platform that expresses a lot of additional materials and resources that I've developed coming from a recruiter and a headhunter's perspective. Some of the things that are going on with the additional trends, the additional stigmas, digital caveats. There's all sorts of good resources available on the website, but for the meantime, you'll want to use the first website URL until they're able to shift the platform over to the new domain. And there's also some additional information on some coaching programs to help people with some of the areas that I've just constantly witnessing where they're getting stuck, and we've developed programs to help people move through some of these challenges. So that is it. I'll give this back over to Peggy, and it's been a real pleasure to be able to speak to individuals nationwide as they really want to accelerate their job search.
Great. Shelly, thanks so much. That was some really great insight, and more than I had expected in terms of the kind of insight that you can give as a recruiter to some of our job seekers who are struggling right now to figure out how to position themselves in this market. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to turn it over to John Martis, and John is going to, you're going to have to move it forward for me. John is going to tell you a little bit about how he landed his job using both Jobfox and the Jobfox resume services. Okay, John.
Thanks, Maggie. Good afternoon, everyone. I got into the job market back in March, and I brought out my old resume. I thought it was a pretty good resume that had worked successfully for me in the past, and I took it and ran it through a service an online service that I had subscribed to, and they made some cosmetic changes, recommendations, and so I went into the job market with it sort of polished up a little bit. And for about 5 months, I didn't get really any serious hits. And then a member of my network had his resume done by Jobfox, and shortly thereafter landed a position with Johnson & Johnson. So he recommended that I do the same, which I did. And I sent in my old resume, and about 2 days later, I got a message back from a resume specialist named Paula. And Paula asked some very specific, pointed questions about not only my experience, but what I was able to achieve in my different roles, and even more specific questions about what industries or what particular jobs I was targeting. And so we went back and forth with that for a couple of days. And at the end of that process, I had a draft, which took about a week to get to me. And we went through that pretty closely for another couple of days, and then finally ended up with a finished product, including a cover letter. About 2 weeks after I went through the process with Paula, there was a job that was posted on the Jobfox site, and I submitted my application along with my new resume. Got a call back within a couple of days, ended up going through the phone screens, through the interview process, and literally had the job at the beginning of October. So it was an extremely successful process for me, and really pointed me in a different direction from how I had my resume structured. So I was very satisfied with the whole process. Paula worked extremely well. And again, the questions that she asked were very specific, very pointed towards what activities not only did I accomplish, but what the results were to my various employers.
Great. John, thank you. Hey, John, before you leave, one of the questions that just came in specifically for you, I might as well ask you now while we have you on, is so what were the main differences between your old resume and the new one that's the job that I guess Paula, your Jobfox writer, wrote for you?
Yeah, I guess there's a bunch of differences. One is it's probably the latest difference is that it's a cosmetic difference. It went from 3 pages down to 2 and had some different formatting, so it looks a lot more professional. But the real difference is we're in and around bulletizing sort of what the accomplishments were, sort of what my value was to the different organizations, what I brought to the different organizations that I had worked with in the past, and what kind of changes and improvement I was able to drive, and physically quantifying those to some level of detail so that prospective buyers or prospective hiring managers could see, okay, this is what this guy brings to the party.
Right. Perfect. Great. Right. And that's very much in line with what Shelly was recommending as well. Okay, thank you, John. We really appreciate it. Now we're going to get to our other questions, and I'm going to actually roll into a question that's also relevant for what John just mentioned. And this question came in from Kathleen. And this is for you, Shelly. how do I illustrate the impact of my role at previous positions if I don't have quantitative, measurable results to fall back on? And that's a question that we get asked very, very often. Our resume consultants get asked that question all the time, after they've received their critique.
With regards, that's a very good question. We do run into that, and there are definitely certain situations where you don't have very specific performance metrics. Try however you can if you can, but if you can't, the next idea is to convey it in a way of, you could leave it just of increasing productivity that affected turnaround time to meet clients' expectations, or improved employee engagement so that we were able to really move forward with being compliant with the new regulations. You can speak to it in a format like that would also create an emotional pull for the reader to want to consider you for the candidacy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we use.
It doesn't always have to be a number, is your...
No, it doesn't. If and wherever possible, I strongly recommend it, but of course there's situations where you can't, so that would be the next strategy to incorporate.
Okay, great, thank you. Next question, and this is for Jeremy, one of our resume consultants, and this is from William, and the question is, in my critique, or the critique you did for me, you mentioned that your writers will know the right keywords to help make my resume come up in searches. Can you explain how that works?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jeremy Brooks, one of the resume consultants, and that's a great question. Actually, nowadays, many employers are getting so many resumes that they don't have the time to go through all of them, so they rely heavily on automated tracking systems, or ATSs. What these do is search for certain keywords, and if your resume does not have all these keywords, they fall into what we like to call the resume black hole, where they kind of disappear and people simply don't know what happened to their submission. And writers like Shelly understand this and are able to tailor your resume accordingly and fit in those keywords so that you are getting past those ATSs, so your resume is getting looked at by actual human eyes, an actual employer.
Right. Okay, great. Thanks, Jeremy. And this one is to another one of our resume consultants. It's from Susan, and it's to Andrew. If I'm interested in having my resume professionally written by Jobfox, will I be able to have direct contact with my writer? And if so, how do I know that that writer is going to know about my particular field?
Very good question. I would say, I guess to address the first part of that question, you'll absolutely have direct contact with your writer. You can always exchange messages directly with Shelly or whomever your writer may be through your Jobfox profile. We have a question and answer discussion board. You can post messages, provide additional information, or set up phone appointments there. I work directly with all of our writers, and they really strive to ensure that you do have that adequate sense of communication with each of our clients. And then to address the second part of your question, we do have a unique matching process in place to make sure you're paired with the writer who has experience writing resumes for your particular field, and then also many times direct experience with hiring managers and recruiters in your field. So you'll fill out a questionnaire that probes a little deeper into your previous employment, career achievements, and also the types of roles that you're targeting moving forward. And we make sure that you're matched to the most suitable writer on our staff.
Great. All right. Thank you. All right. Last question. And there are many, many more questions. So for those of you whose questions are not answered, feel free to give one of our resume consultants a call, and we will answer those questions for you. But last question, and this came from Francine, and I'm going to answer this one. It says, because this is something that is near and dear to me and something that I follow very closely. And the question is, do you see the job market improving? And the answer to that is, it depends. It depends on where you live. But what I will tell you, for those of you who are actively out there looking for new jobs, we're expecting at Jobfox, we're expecting to be adding another 50,000 new jobs to our site in January. January and February is the hiring season. So if ever there was a time for you to be out there and active and really going after the job market, it's going to be January, February. If you've been discouraged in the past, get yourself motivated over the holidays, get your resume in tip-top shape, and get out there in January and February, and that's where you're going to find the most opportunity. Now, could you move this ahead? We are offering, for anyone who attended the workshop, we're going to offer a special package. It's our best discount. It's $274, or you can get it for $50 a month for 6 months. It includes a full resume rewrite. That's not just cosmetic. That's a full resume rewrite, the cover letter, the e-version that's so important, that's filled with the keywords so that you get picked up. And we're adding a bonus thank you note that you can use after the interview. We're also offering for the workshop attendees our 60-day interview guarantee, which basically says that if you don't receive an interview after you have your resume rewritten within 60 days, we'll rewrite that resume for you for free. We want you to get those interviews so you can get the job. Now, to get this particular deal, you just have to call into our resume line and use the keyword Shelly. And unfortunately, we don't have a link that you can just buy this. You have to call in and order it from one of the resume consultants. Okay? Next slide, please. Last, I'd like to just thank everyone for attending. We really appreciate you taking the time. I apologize that we've run over. This is the first one of these we've done. We're going to be kind of putting a series together for our job seekers with different topics. Again, I apologize for the late start. We're working out the tweaks, and we will get there. So, again, thank you, and I wish everyone well in the job search, and best wishes for a happy holiday.